Hello everyone, welcome back to Pot and Plant Entertainment. My name is Chris, and in case you don't know, I review movies and I rank them on a scale of 0 to 100 in increments of 5. Today I am finally talking about Back to the Future Part 2. I reviewed the first movie, it was like my third or fourth review on this channel, and now I'm finally getting to the sequels. I'm currently binge watching the series again, so I figured why not. But yeah, Back to the Future Part 2. This was a really good follow up to the first one, and I'm finally talking about it. It's been a while, and this is a long overdue review, but I'm finally doing it. So Back to the Future Part 2 was released in 1989, and it stars Michael J. Fox, Christopher Lloyd, Leah Thompson, Thomas F. Wilson, and Elizabeth Shue. It was directed by Robert Zemeckis and is produced by Steven Spielberg, Frank Marshall, and Kathleen Kennedy. And this movie, Doc Brown and Marty McFly and Marty's girlfriend, they go to the future to prevent Marty's son from making a big mistake. He's going there to impersonate his son, to get his son out of making the biggest mistake of his life and throwing away his life. And the thing is that Marty looks so identical to his son that he's able to go there and pretend to be him in order to get his son out of this situation. Now, he does. But that's not a spoiler because that's not what the movie's about. While they're there, Marty buys a sports almanac from all these scores from 1950 to the year 2000. And he buys it so that he can place bets on sports games when he goes back to 1985. Because they go to future to 2015, and when they go back to 1985, he wants to place all these sport bets so he can get rich. But Doc Brown tells him this isn't a good idea, and he throws it away. And Biff, who is his father's high school bully, in the future, he overhears all of this, and he steals the almanac from the trash can. And then he steals the DeLorean. He goes back in time, gives this book to himself from 1955, and then goes back to the future. Okay, and when Marty and Doc Brown go back to the past, they find that 1985 is completely changed because Biff gave himself this sports almanac. And it's all changed for the worse. And so they have to go back to 1955 to get the almanac back from Biff. Okay, this is a really crazy movie, okay? That's a long plot synopsis. I probably should have just read the IMDb plot synopsis, but that's what happens in this movie, and it's a fantastic movie. I love this movie, and I dressed up a little bit like Marty McFly from Back to the Future Part 2. I didn't have a black, hat like he has, so I just threw sunglasses on the top, but, crazy plot, and this movie is only like an hour and 40 minutes, but it feels a lot longer because a lot happens in this movie. And that's not even a bad thing. Normally that would be a bad thing for a movie, but not for this movie. Not for this movie at all. A lot happens in this movie. It's a crazy movie. It's the plot, you could say, is superior to the first one. This isn't better than the first movie, don't get me wrong, but you could say the plot, it's a lot more intricate than the first one, for sure. So I guess that would be my first plot. It's a very pro with this movie is that it's a very intricate plot. The special effects are really good. There's a few shots in the movie where the special effects are starting to look a little bit dated, but for the most part, the special effects look really great in this movie, just like they did in the first one. The music is amazing. Alex Silvestri composed he did it again. He's one of the greatest musical composers for movies, ever. Right behind John Williams, he's probably the best to ever do it. The characters are all great and unique, just like the first one. They bring back all these guys from the first movie. Michael J. Fox and Christopher Lloyd, their chemistry is still there, and it's still great. It's exciting. It's suspenseful. It's not as suspenseful as the first movie, but there's still some good suspense in it. And there's a lot of details in this. There's so many. When 2015 actually rolled around, a lot of people were talking about what this movie showed us 2015 would be like, versus what it was actually like. And it's a lot different from how this movie predicted. This movie predicted us to have flying cars and hoverbirds and all sorts of stuff. And it goes, and they really thought this through for the future. They really put a lot of thought and effort into 2015. There's there's a scene, one of the opening scenes is them in this alleyway, and you'll notice that there's a bunch of DVDs there. Okay, now VHS was still a thing when this movie came out in '89, but there's a bunch of DVDs there, like in this alley, that look like they're getting ready to get thrown away. And basically what they're doing is that they're saying, well, by 2015, these are probably going to be obsolete. And they kind of still are, because, I mean, they kind of are, because things are, like, going viral, but, like, us hardcore movie fans, we like to have a hard copy of our movies. I'm never, ever going to go viral completely. I'm always going to want to have a hard copy of my movies, always. Even if it's on VHS, I'm always going to want to have a hard copy of my movies. So, there little things like, they put a lot of thought in this. And again, even though the future's a lot different from what they showed us in this movie, they actually did get a few things right, which is pretty cool. But, yeah. A lot of detail went into the futuristic setting of this film. I also like, so like one of the future things in this movie is that people don't exactly use their windows. Instead, they have a projector screen in front of their windows, and then they choose a setting that they want to look at outside, right? And so they show this to us, and it flips through all these different images, and one of the images is actually of the Twin Towers. Now, this came out in '89, and you know, the unfortunate event of 9/11 happened on September 11, 2001, so they obviously didn't know that was going to happen back in 1989. I just think it's really cool, kind of interesting how this movie takes place in 2015, but the Twin Towers are there, you know what I mean? That's part of the reason why I like watching older movies, is because a lot of time they will feature the Twin Towers in those movies, and it's cool to see them in movies. Like, it really is. Like, Ghostbusters features them. American Psycho has a lot of shots of the Twin Towers. Die Hard with a Vengeance has this great shot of the Twin Towers behind Bruce Willis and Samuel L. Jackson as they're running. I like seeing the Twin Towers in old movies. And there's also this movie. You won't get this until you go back and watch it again after watching part 3, but this movie drops a few hints at part 3 in it, which is really, really cool. It's really, really clever writing. This movie has a lot of clever writing in it. The writing for this movie was really, really good. Thomas F. Wilson is very funny. He plays Biff in this movie, the villain. Actually, he's the villain in all 3 of them. Biff is such an iconic movie villain. He's one of the greatest movie villains of all time, and Biff was probably my favorite part of this movie. He was definitely the best. In my opinion, he's the best part of this movie because he plays a huge role in this movie. Biff gets a lot of screen time in this film, and he's so unbelievably funny. Like, Thomas F. Wilson is such a talented actor. I'm honestly kind of astounded that he didn't do much outside of the Back to the Future movies, because he's really, really good in these movies, especially part 2. He has a lot of screen time. He plays 4 different characters in this movie. 4 characters in this movie, and he just knocks it out of the park. He was so funny in this movie. I loved him. One of my favorite movie villains, Thomas F. Wilson. He knocked it out of the park with his signature role as Biff Tannen, and he definitely did the best in part 2. I really, really liked him in this movie. He was my favorite part of the film. I also, funny thing, so like, when Biff becomes rich, this is just a little fun fact for you, but he's actually based on Donald Trump. And if you look at him, he kind of looks like Donald Trump. Donald Trump was like a huge deal back in the 80s, not as big of a deal as he is now, but he was pretty popular back in the 80s, and so he was actually modeled after Donald Trump, which is just a little fun fact I thought I'd throw in there for you, because that's kind of cool. And what movie, okay, so can you name any other sequel where the movie takes place inside of the first movie? If you know of another one, let me know in the comments, because I don't. This movie actually goes into the first movie. What other movie can you see a sequel go back inside and take place inside of its predecessor. That's so cool. Like, this is such a cool movie. Everything about this movie is just so cool. Marty does a lot of sneaking around in this movie, which makes for some funny moments and some suspenseful moments, and the ending is awesome. Really, really awesome ending. This is a spoiler-free review, so I won't spoil anything for you. But there's this moment in the rain where this man pulls up in a car. Really, really, just great stuff. Great stuff. I would have never thought of that, but these writers clearly did, and well, obviously they did, but they did, and it's great stuff. It's great stuff. I do have a few cons with this movie. So, for one thing, I don't understand why this movie takes place in October. Okay, because this movie takes place like, what, October 21st, right? 2015, right? That's the date they go to. They go to October 21st, 2015. And I don't understand why they chose to have this take place in October, because there are no Halloween decorations anywhere. Now, that's a good thing, because having them go into 2015 and it be at Halloween time, that would have been too much. That would have been too much. So why did they go into October? Why couldn't it have been November or even September, like early September or something? Like, why? I don't understand. Because there's no Halloween decorations in this movie. None. And so, like did people in 2015 not celebrate Halloween? I don't understand. Like, why is there no Halloween decorations? So, they really should have chose a different month for them to go into when they went to 2015. Now, this movie and the third movie, they both have this one big issue, and it's that everybody's ancestors and relatives look exactly the same. Marty's son is an exact clone of Marty. Biff's grandson is an exact clone of Biff. Why? Or did these guys not inherit any traits from anyone else? They are exact replicas of their father and grandfather. It's so cartoony and dumb. Like, the whole idea that Marty's son could look exactly like it, so much like him, that if Marty can dress up just like him, he can walk around and pass for him. Like, this isn't the Parent Trap. Like, what in the world? There's a scene where Marty is riding in the back of Biff's car, and Biff's driving. Okay, and Marty's got this walkie-talkie, and he's communicating to Doc Brown. Okay, Biff has got the radio on while he's driving, right? So, okay, it's a plot hole. So, Marty is in the back of the seat, and he's leaning up over the seat on the back of the car, and he's talking to Doc Brown on this walkie-talkie. Okay, even though Biff has the radio on, don't you think he would have heard him? He wasn't exactly whispering. He's like, Doc, 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 on the walkie-talkie. Like, wouldn't he have heard him or even glanced in the rearview mirror and saw him? Like, how in the world does he do this without Biff knowing? Like, he's 2 feet behind him. Like, there's no way. There's no way. But overall, Back to the Future Part 2, I think, is not far behind the first one. I really don't think this one's much worse than the first one. I mean, obviously, it's not as good as the first one, but I don't think it's much worse. I really don't think it's far off. This is a crazy movie that goes into 3 different periods of time with all these actors playing different versions of each other. Marty plays like 3 different versions of himself. He plays himself, his son, and himself from the future. All these characters are playing themselves from the past and the future and the present. It's crazy, but it's great. It's very, very clever writing. I love this movie. And I'm going to give Back to the Future Part 2 a 95. This is a really, really good movie. I love this movie. I love this movie. I don't love it as much as I love the first one, but I really love this movie. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe to Potty Planet Entertainment for more and hit the like button. Leave movie review suggestions down in the comments down below. Follow me on Instagram at Potty Planet Entertainment for channel updates and much love.